lot definitely happens these days, where I remember even a couple years ago, you could go weeks or months between remarkable things, and it seems now we have a mix of good and bad coming at you real fast. And I was gonna originally try to do one of these videos, these audios, and I want to get this fixed so I can do some actual videos to put on, and that should be nice. But for now, there's this, and I was gonna do it about the shooting that took place the other day, and then the next day, a couple days later, there was the election, and so I wanted to talk about why I think that Republican lost there, and why it's really a blue state and not just the obvious, and go into the shooting too. But I gave my reason on Facebook actually for why I think that the shooting happened, and the liberals didn't like that too much. They dismissed it right away, and some criticized it, so I thought I'd give that some more thought, and then I'll do the Virginia thing next. But and today I just saw that there's a hit piece out for Roy Moore. Somehow 40 years ago he harassed someone supposedly, and this was a magical day because everybody seemed to come out at once, and McConnell was just right on cue about telling him to step down, just almost before it was announced. And of course this isn't true. I mean, he's been a judge, he's been in the public spotlight for so long, and even when they thought that Strange was going to win, especially when Trump was supporting him, somehow then these people, they didn't come out and say anything at all until just now. There's a month till the election, and obviously the establishment is panicking. So there's McCain and all those kind of rhino people out telling him to step down and accusing him of that. And just like all those accusations against the one that they picked, the Strange, to run against him, which is also basically a Democrat. You can't tell them apart too much these days, and it's just really irritating. And the worst part is that each time one of these comes, you get a handful of these people that believe it. Even these ones that, like, they say they're Trump supporters, maybe they are, or whatever they are, they don't like a certain candidate that much or something, and then they say, well, I usually don't believe this stuff, but I think this one. It's like, well, no, you just use putting that kind of disclaimer out just because you don't happen to like this one. And anyway, it's we say it's a month until that, and there's nothing else that they could say. And they spent millions. It's strange. They spent millions on a race in Alabama, and you would think during that time they would have dug some of these people up, but they didn't do that. So I just heard about that a couple hours ago. But then the shooting, and of course whenever shootings happen, just like when there's Muslims attack, you can't really talk about it or say what could be wrong, what could be maybe an underlying problem, because it's just so horrendous and there's no excuse. And of course there's not. I mean, everybody knows that. Anyone in the right mind knows that you don't go around hurting someone, you don't go around shooting, and you somehow have to put all these disclaimers out before you even speak or give some kind of reason or look into it. And then even when you do that, usually it's not even good enough then, because then then somebody just responds by saying, well, there's never any excuse, and then you agree, yeah, there's not, and then that's the end. And so case closed. And what I wrote this the other day, as I was saying on Facebook, and it got a bit of attention from the liberals because they didn't like it. But in the past 20 years, the shootings have increased some here, as well as, of course, the Muslim attacks. And the Muslim attacks, you fix that by banning them and by just honestly getting them out. They're just not compatible with this civilization here. That's just it. Before that, they weren't in here, so the attacks didn't happen. But separate from that are these shootings. The Muslims, they use mostly bombs, and now they're using cars. They don't really use guns. Somebody tried to say that one in New York had guns also, and then supposedly some of the eyewitnesses said that there weren't guns, and I know there's a big push for gun control, so I wouldn't doubt that was thrown in there. But I don't know. And with the shootings, it's been about 20 years that they've increased. And one thing about the shootings, like with this recently, there's been the one that was after Scalise and all the other Republicans at the baseball game. And that guy, of course he was mentally ill, and that's what, I mean, they all have to be to a point, because nobody normal does that. But other people that are mentally ill too, they don't get triggered like that. It doesn't, whatever it does to make someone tick to do that, even though it's very wrong, it's interesting to see what it is, and if there's any way to prevent it. I mean, that would be good to look in and try to have this happen less. And well, the first thing is, of course, deep state, who are the globalists, actually, the elites, the globalists, the ones that, the New World Order, the ones that don't want the prosperity, that don't like the president, that want to make him look bad, so they want us to remember him as like having all these shootings and all these attacks and all this stuff going on. They want unrest, and they're amazed that they can't cause too much unrest, no matter how much they try, and with half the country on their side, basically, doing strange things like howling at the moon and such. And that, even considering all that, there's not too much unrest. And so they're behind a lot of these kind of attacks, like the Vegas one, when you look really into that. And they pick these people that are already have it in them to do that. So it's not so much that the deep state themselves does this, and when there's false flags, it's not that they don't happen, but it's more like the deep state picks someone that they see as vulnerable to this, or that wants to go out and do this kind of stuff anyway. And not every single shooting has been that. That's actually more recent, I think. I mean, you have some shootings from years ago. I don't think it necessarily was that they were all the deep state agents, or that people that they recruited to do these. And so one thing that these have in common, that all these non-Muslim attack shootings, is so they're liberal, and they're male, and they're white, and they're all kind of the same age too. I think that Dylan Roof was that youngest, and then they're kind of in their 30s, maybe 40s. And so, like, you wonder, why is that? And we don't know. But when you look at what else has happened for the past 20 years, well, it's kind of been this sort of underlying attacks, kind of like on the men who are actually being men. I mean, they're constantly told, like, you know, like, don't do this, don't, like, you got this toxic masculinity, don't mansplain stuff. If you get accused of harassment or something years later, that the woman's to be believed no matter what it is. they're believed, it can ruin your career, that's okay because they're to be believed, and you're not, you're not all that good in a way, like all the way back through school. Most know that the boys, they grow up slower than the girls, and so when they have the both same ages in the classroom, now they end up giving the boys the ADD medicine instead of just letting them like play and be rambunctious and all that kind of stuff. And then the same kind of as they get older too, it's been that way. Like it's been like these feminists kind of like browbeat the guys that just kind of like want to be regular guys, and so like they get in trouble for opening doors, and they get called sexist for everything they do, and they're told that their blue collar job is no good, and they get mocked for it all the time. They get mocked for hunting. They get told they don't need a gun, and so they say they use the gun for hunting. Then they get told they don't need to hunt. They get told to just get in touch with that feminine side, and if they want to provide for a family, that's sexist. If they want to basically do what's in the instinct that makes the men and women different, like what James Damore wrote about on his own memo on his own time and shared it with some people and got fired over it. Before that, he pointed out kind of the differences. And so you kind of basically keep telling men that they're just not so good all their lives, like that underlying thing with those examples like that. And like the DNC recently, it said that there's no place for white men in their DNC, that they're not accepting them in there. And I mean, that's a big part of the population here in the United States. And well, they're by no means perfect at all, and they're by no means good, and nobody's better than anybody. But when there's just that kind of like constant, like you're trying to just do your thing, but you're always told you're wrong, some snap. After a while, they look for another outlet, and it's a bad one. And for some of these shooters, it seems kind of like they just reached a limit and snapped. And maybe that's not the reason for them, but it's something to look into, I think, because that's what's kind of changed during the past 20 years when, I mean, we can't even like basically tell like differentiate the men and women anymore. Like we're supposed to say like male person instead of like mailman, and fire person, and like police person, and it's like no individuality with that. And whenever there is individuality, it's like it goes towards the feminists that scream the loudest. And like with employment, they say like women and minorities are encouraged to apply. Okay, well, who does that leave out? It leaves out the branch of these guys that end up doing these shootings. And of course, it's not saying that as there's any excuse whatsoever, because obviously there hasn't been that many shootings, so most people that even feel that way don't snap like that and don't hurt anybody, and there's no excuse to do that. But it is something, just like I read recently that a lot of these guys that consider themselves feminists, I used to think, well, they're just